Welcome to the Show Me Podcast with your host, Jeff
You gotta love it.
Livingston. Every episode, a guest joins Jeff and discusses how images tell stories and what makes them work
Honestly.
or not.
Like a sports radio talk show.
It's hilarious. Hey, everybody. It's Jeff Livingston. Welcome to the Show Me Podcast. This is officially Season 2, Episode 1. We have a fantastic guest with us. Please meet Lawrence Jackson.
Hello.
I'll provide the intro in a second. But yeah, that intro is like we intentionally cheesed it up. I got my buddy Carter to record it. And yeah, we actually have highlight reels of people just like, what the heck is this?
It's amazing.
It is. And then Panama is with us. She's our sound engineer. So before we dive into it, let me provide the proper introduction. Lawrence is probably a little bit humble about his background, but I'm going to tout you up as a PR guy.
Okay.
You were an official Obama White House photographer for the entire administration from start to finish. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Before that, you were an AP reporter,
photographer.
Photojournalist, excuse me. And he is an accomplished photographer now in his own right as a private practitioner.
Wow. Thank you.
And he also wrote this book, Yes, We Did. And if you have not gotten this book yet and you haven't read it, please do. I think you will find it to be incredibly powerful and emotional. It kind of provides some really strong insights and intimate moments in that administration.
Thank you, sir.
So with that, before we dive in, I really kind of want to talk about the book because it's you had a rare insider's view. We had Sharon Farmer on. Actually, she kicked off season 1, so it's got to be a
good
White
company.
House photographer to kick it off, right? But you know, one of the things I noticed about your book was it started off with a Gordon Parks quote. And we talked about Gordon Parks last episode or last season, I think it was. And it was really kind of amazing. So let me just pull it up really quickly. And I wanted to ask you what your thoughts were on Mr. Parks and why you found him to be so important to you. But first, the subject matter is much more important than the photographer, Gordon Parks.
Yeah. And that speaks a lot to me myself. So, so the story is I was a young photographer working for the Virginia Pilot. And I don't know, I was probably 22, 23 years old. And I'm having this conversation with another photographer who mentions the name Gordon Parks, right? And I say, who's Gordon Parks? And this photographer looks at me like I'm crazy.
Does his mouth drop open?
Yeah. So immediately I back then there really was no Amazon or internet. So I go look up Gordon Parks and go to the bookstore and I buy the book Voices in the Mirror, which is his autobiography. And I read it and just immediately I'm drawn to this guy for his character, his artistic drive, his creative drive. And then I start seeing pictures that he's taken. I was like, oh, I know that picture.
Oh, like American Gothic.
American Gothic.
Right.
So he's always been a fan. I've always been a fan of his. And when I bought a couple of his books, and then one of his last books, I think it's called Autumn in the Fall or Autumn Seasons or something like that. And he was in his 80s when he made this book, and he was just doing these in-home kind of abstract pictures, So this guy's had a career that spanned 60 plus years, and he's still being creative. He still has that drive to be creative in his 80s, and I've always been blown away by that.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. Do you want to be creative into your 80s as well?
My wife and I joke about, what retirement looks like, and I have to do something in retirement. I'm going to try and be creative, or I'm going to, my hands will not be idle when I stop.
It's funny. Caitlin and I are the same way. We're actually talking about getting a quote-unquote vacation home near one of our favorite national parks, which would be the retirement home, so I can photograph the daylights of it when I'm done.
That sounds nice.
At some point.
Yeah.
We'll see. God willing. But let's go back to you and the book, of course. And Yes, We Did. And you notice this as well in your book in the introduction, so I don't think I'm speaking out of turn, but I noticed that the photography in the book showed a lot of really strong, intimate moments, behind the scenes moments. Like there were several photographs of hands.
Yeah.
There were several photographs of hands holding.
Yeah.
There were intimate moments with Michelle and Brock. And I really was kind of wondering, can you kind of discuss how those shots came about? Was that you kind of just like being there and them being so used to you being there? Or?
Yeah. Well, it's a little bit of everything. As a photographer, at least for me, one of the biggest compliments I can receive is that I didn't know you were in the room, or I didn't see you there, and these pictures are amazing because, your presence wasn't felt, but it's obviously seen because of the result of what you have, right?
Right.
So when someone tells me that, I feel like I've done my job. I feel like I've tried to be as small as possible and not, obstruct or, change anything that's going on in the room. But at the same time, I've been able to capture either a nice emotion or a good moment or, a nice angle or something. So, when you say an image is intimate, I'm just trying to make sure that it's as true as it can be, and you can feel the authenticity of what's going on.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I think the one that the people that are watching the YouTube cast will see is the one with them holding hands walking off to Marine One.
Right.
Which is, again, they probably never knew you were back there or
Of
didn't
course
think
not.
that you were there. But what a powerful shot. What a great moment.
Thank you. Thank you.
And one where there's probably not a press gallery necessarily stalking them left and right.
Well, when they're walking out to Marine One, the press is out there, but they're not from that angle which I shot this picture. They're not in that spot. Yeah. So,
gosh, hard life, where you just constantly like a microscope.
Yeah.
In the end, did you kind of feel like part of the family in a way? I mean, did they kind of embrace you as somebody that was just one of them, literally? Because you were there for 8 years.
Yeah. Well, I'm not considering myself one of the family, but I do consider myself a friend of the family, and I know that they've considered me a friend of the family, because you're around for so many years and you've watched Sasha and Malia grow up just like my own kids grow up. There's a familiarity that is really appreciated, at least on my part, about working for them.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring up something which, again, came up in the book, but I think it's an interesting point, which is we already talked about Sharon. She was the first African-American photographer to serve in the White House, I believe.
She was...
and the first woman, right?
The first, I think, civilian African-American.
Ah.
I have a friend, a guy named Dick Dunstan, who was in the military back when they had military photographers.
Ah.
He served in the White House, and this is probably in the late 60s, early 70s, if I'm not mistaken.
There you go, man.
Yeah.
I'm learning something already. So to the point, you weren't the first one, but you were the White House photographer who happened to be African-American during the first African-American president.
Yes.
And it's a big theme in the book. Like it meant something to you.
Right.
Discuss this. I mean, historically speaking, the impact, what it meant to you personally?
Well, I honestly started the job. I wanted to do the job, and I didn't want race to be a part of this job. I mean, this is a historic presidency in its own right, and I didn't want to bring my emotions into what I was doing. I just wanted to be a documentary photographer documenting what I saw of the first African-American president.
Right.
But obviously what happens is, these events, they start to stir up things in me, like when the Reverend Wright issue, when he was campaigning, he had to address that. Or the Trayvon Martin incident, the murder, he has to address that, as a president. And every time there was a somewhat controversial issue that it was kind of spinning in my head, he would come out, President Obama would come out, and he would give a talk, and he would be speaking. He would put words where the thoughts were jumbling up in my head in a coherent and, beautiful sentence.
Right.
And that connection, and I know now it's because he's a black man, I'm a black man. We're only 8 years apart in age, and he is, he sees things a lot of the way I see things. So that connection of just, of not shared experiences, but similar experiences that have, I've always appreciated and respected him for, and just his insight on how he gets things done. So, watching that over the 8 years, I've just been drawn to this person who happens to be an African American president,
Right.
happens to be African American, but it just makes it, I don't know. I can't put it into words what.
Yeah, there was just some sort of an element of extra special sauce to it. It seems like.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, actually, it's just that. It's just my experiences growing up. And right now we're in a woke
Oh, it's
culture.
bad.
We're
bad.
people are.
I'm Jewish. I get
Yeah,
it. It's
yeah.
not good.
Yeah.
It's not a good time right now.
So it's.
I told my wife to get the passports ready. just in case. You don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah. And you were talking about if there's a repeat of 2016 and 2020. Is that what?
Yeah, or 2024.
But the thing about President Obama, he would also be the most positive and the most inclusive president that I can remember. And George Bush tried it, Bill Clinton tried it, but every time President Obama stepped out, he would always talk about the best of Americans and the best of America, and he'd always be positive.
Yeah, and there's another element to him which I think was conveyed well also through your work, which seemed to be like he had like an everyman kind of character to him, which I was kind of secretly hoping that you would get the shot of him at Dairy Godmother.
At Dairy Godmother?
In Alexandria.
Oh, yeah.
You're right. But, he was the guy that would just show up at like the meatball shop and like the Taylor Gourmet or
Right.
or any kind of random sub shop or, fast food.
Let's not talk about food right now.
Right. But you know what I mean? He was that guy. Or they would go to Target in Alexandria,
Yeah.
right? They didn't, or Arlington, South Arlington, that whole,
Yeah.
that area for Christmas shopping. They were people. They acted like people.
Yeah.
And maybe America didn't want to know that about them, but that's what really kind of came across was this kind of sense of everyday kind of a guy that would like shoot ball with you and would kick your butt.
They were everyday people. I mean, you have to understand before the that wasn't my camera.
That was a Fuji.
That was his camera.
We don't talk gear on this show.
We don't talk what?
We don't talk brands on
Brands
the
of
show.
the show. Okay.
Sorry.
So they were, before he became president, he was a senator, obviously. And before a senator, he was a state senator. But, say in 2003, 2004, they were just like the rest of us.
Right.
They really were. And I think that's what people see in them, in their normalcy that, hey, 5 years ago, you were just like me driving car through rush hour traffic and, so they get it,
Right.
George Bush was, he was governor for a number of years. Bill Clinton was governor. So these guys kind of came into.
Plus the Bushes were a little dynastic and
right.
nature.
But he was like, 4 years before he became president, he was driving himself to work so there was a real kind of blue collar sentiment to him that I think a lot of people appreciated.
Right. Before we move on, and I think it's a good segue too, because we're about to talk about kids a little bit, and of course the Obamas' two daughters are in there. But the Selma March,
Yeah.
I mean, I honestly think this is the best photograph that you have in the book, and it's
thank
just
you.
fantastic. And obviously, it's got all that in there. His sleeves are rolled up.
Yeah.
The historical significance of was it the 60th anniversary?
So
50th?
what I appreciate about this photo is if you're looking at it, to the right you've got the original foot soldiers.
Yeah.
People who were water cannoned and batoned and hit and just treated horribly, and they were fighting for our voting rights, our civil rights. And then in the center you have first African American president, first lady, and then off to the left, I mean, and their presence is a result of the foot soldiers.
Right.
And then to the left, you've got Sasha Malia, who are the future,
Next generation.
the next generation, and they're gonna hopefully take what's been accomplished and take it and push the ball, or go a little bit further.
Were you on the street, like down on the ground when you shot this?
I was on the back of a pickup truck.
Oh, really?
With all the other press. And yeah, we were all, taking as many pictures as we could because that was a very unique moment.
Yeah, it's a fantastic photograph. Congratulations on this one.
Thank you, sir.
Yep. So speaking of the children, was very fond of children.
Yes.
He was very fond of children, and many of your photos include them. And of course, there's the whole homage from Bono about the one with the girl with her head kind of, just like, and the Abraham Lincoln behind her. What was his view of America's future, the future generation?
They both loved and appreciated kids because they knew that they were the future, and they had so many events. The First Lady had so many events on the White House grounds because she wanted, especially young kids of color, she wanted them to see the White House. She wanted them to be in the White House. And she would often say, you have to picture it before you can be it, or, picture yourselves here.
Visualize it, right?
Visualize it because this is, this place is your place. It belongs to you just like as much as anybody else. And she would always kind of hammer that into these kids and just say, look, you have everything that you need to, go forward and be prosperous in this life. And I want to help you see it, and I want to help you get there.
Right. That's fantastic.
Yeah. And, and whenever they were having bad days, the staff would try and get kids in front of both of them, because they knew kids would brighten their day.
Right.
Yeah.
That's kind of cute. They were amazing.
Yeah.
And they were very inclusive, more so than most, right? Like you talked about Easter event, and the Christmas tree. I know my daughter actually participated in one of the Easter events.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
She participated in it, or she went to the Easter egg roll?
She went to the Easter egg roll, got the eggs, the whole 9 yards.
Oh, that's great.
Loved it, yeah. But it was really amazing how they did that. But you got also to see the other people's faces, right? And you got to see the impact, and how impactful was Michelle on these kids in your mind?
Well, I mean, you can see it in, I can't tell you how many times we would go to a high school or elementary school and these young girls would start crying.
Really? Like the Beatles?
Like the Beatles.
Like the Beatles.
Start crying and bawling because they were overcome with emotion by seeing her for the first time or meeting her for the first time. And
would you cry, Panama?
Absolutely. I do the Michael Jackson faint.
Well, I can maybe arrange that for you. How about that? So, yeah, no, they...
Well, you're in it now.
Yeah, okay. I'll make it happen. So, yeah, the response that kids and young people had to them because of who they were. And I you talk about the First Lady and President, and you talk about people doing good works, people who wake up and they do something good, right? That's great. But imagine being someone who inspires people to do good, right?
It's a very powerful thing to do.
So if you inspire 1,000 people, then you've just, amplified your good by 1,000 times.
It's the ultimate butterfly effect.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think, history is going to look on them very well because of their intentions, their heart, their, what they've done.
Yeah, and they've continued to handle themselves with grace.
Absolutely.
100%. So we talked about the impact and the emotions that they bring. Now, you have your own story.
I have my own story.
Well, you got a little camera from your mom, right?
Oh, right. Yeah.
Pentax 100. You had a 50 on it? Or 1,000 was it?
K1000.
K1000.
Yeah.
Pentax. Wow.
50 millimeter.
It's a perfect street camera, right?
It was
Everything.
great. Yeah.
So, so she really kind of knew it was important to you, and you talk about in the book that she kind of put it together to make that happen for you. It was definitely a stretch.
Yeah.
And we all know how much cameras cost, and it is a stretch.
Yeah.
It still is a stretch for many people.
Absolutely.
So with that in mind, like here you are working for them now, and you're their photographer, an official photographer of the United States of America documenting the White House. And they go to Richmond and they meet your mom.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Well, I say in the book that I've seen the president greet 1,000 or 100 families before, and he's always gracious and very giving of his time. And But when it's your own family being greeted by the president and he shakes everyone's hand, he makes small talk with them, and he's looking at them in the eye, and then he gives my mom a kiss on the cheek because I think he appreciates mothers just because his mom, he had a strong mom like I have a strong mom, and his mom would do anything for him as my mom would do anything for me.
Sure.
So, at the time I wasn't overly emotional about it. I was just very happy,
Right.
just very, very.
But you photographed it too.
No. Pete took pictures of
Pete
of
took
the
those?
greet of the greet. Yeah, I was just introducing the people, introducing my family to the president. But then upon reflection, it's like, oh man, that was just that was the best. My mom was happy. She was she was very touched to meet the president, as was my older brother and sister, my niece. But it's when you're at home in the middle of the night or late at night and you're kind of decompressing from the day and you're like, oh my God, that really happened. The president really talked to my mother and gave her a kiss and made her feel special. And the next day, after meeting my family, I walk into the Oval Office to set up for some departure photos. And the president's behind the Oval Office Resolute desk, and he notices that I come in and he says to me, he says, Lawrence, it was nice meeting your family yesterday. And I'm like, man, dude. The honor was all theirs, sir. I mean, I didn't say that. I said, sir, the honor was all theirs. Thank you very much for the time that you spent with them. And it's things like that little gesture of him talking about or just saying, hey, it was nice meeting your family. He didn't have to say that.
Right.
I mean, why?
But yeah, right. He could totally be on to the next thing because he is
totally
president,
on to
right?
Right. He's got a lot of things on his plate. So I always remember that. And it just shows to the character and to the type of person that he is.
Now you got kids too.
I do.
Did they meet him as well? I'm sure, right?
They have. And, in fact, the first Easter egg roll, April 2009, our kids we have two kids, Patrick and Sophia. Sophia's 15, Patrick's 13. They were 4 and 3 at the time.
Oh, wow.
So that the literal Easter egg roll, they roll the egg with a spatula or spoon.
Yeah.
They were lined up as the president. He went down the line and greeted each kid, and then he blew the whistle, and then my kids were part of that first line of Easter egg rollers, right?
Wow.
The next day, the news photographers got pictures of it, and their pictures were all over the country.
Wow.
Front page of
Did you feel good or bad about that?
I felt fine about that.
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
But I was getting emails and calls from friends and family. Hey, is that Patrick and Sophia that I see in the front? I was like, yeah.
We needed models, man.
We needed models. So they were, they paid no attention to that stuff, but it was really cool.
Yeah, I'm sure later on they'll really appreciate that.
I hope so. I hope so.
100%, man.
Yeah.
All right, so I want to kind of move on to your stuff and where you're at.
Yeah.
But before we get too far, now that it's over, what do you remember most about that experience?
I remember the people. I remember the connections, the relationships, the hard work, the long days, the laughter and the tears, and the things that we got accomplished, and the things that we didn't get accomplished.
Right.
And I remember, just how much fun it was looking back at it, but how much work it was at the same time.
Yeah, not bad.
Yeah. It's all good.
It's Major League, man. So now you're out, and you're doing your own thing. How is it afterwards? Like, you were a photojournalist.
Mm-hmm.
You were there, and you took like a significant cut to do that.
Pay cut, correct.
Now you're back out. How has that changed your perspective of photography and where you're at now?
Well, I, after the White House ended, I took like 6 weeks off. In January 2017. I probably didn't pick up the camera until probably the end of February, beginning of March. And I just kind of decompressed from the previous year, because 2016 was a year of travel and just being slammed.
Election, right?
Election, well, he wasn't running for office, but he was just trying to get as much done as possible this last year. And so, after leaving the White House and starting my own freelance business, I've done some editorial work. I've done some corporate stuff, some political stuff, kind of a range of things.
Little bit of a tapas menu there. You get
Yeah,
a little
exactly.
this, a little of that.
Exactly. And it's been good. I mean, I think the thing that I always appreciate is the spice or the variety of photography. You know, it could be a little portrait here, it could be documenting something here, and going to a sporting event there. And I've done all that in the last 3 years. I've done sporting events. I've worked for some news organizations. I've worked for some political organizations. So I feel very lucky in a lot of ways that I've been able to do these things.
Where do you want to go with it? I mean, I find like sometimes it helps to take an inventory. Like I have the same thing happen where people want me to shoot some architecture. Then we were talking today earlier, I did a whole bunch of LinkedIn shots, and then there are certain things that my heart migrates to.
Right.
Like that inspires me, that brings in the passion, right? I love photojournalism for brands, actually, when I get to do brand journalism, if you would, but really tell a story, not just go in and shoot something that's epic for Instagram. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So what's like really kind of like inspiring you right now?
Well, I mean, literally the last year and a half has been about the book.
Right.
So I've been putting all my energy and focus into that. But on the side, I've been doing, and you know, we've talked about this. I've been doing a series of portraits on Instagram of former Obama staffers.
The Obama Knots.
The Obama Knots, yeah. And I'm going to kick that up into a higher gear in 2020.
Oh, cool.
So that's the plan. And also, I worked on 3 campaigns so far this year. This year. That would be, I started out helping out with Elizabeth Warren.
Right.
Then I helped out Buttigieg and Vice President Biden.
Okay.
I did some work with him.
He might know you.
He does.
Right.
Yeah. He's you know, and I'm not picking anybody in the.
Would you go back?
Would I go back
if one of them won and they asked you to go, would you go back?
Yes, maybe. And the only reason I say maybe is because you know, and a friend of mine, a former White House photographer, told me this. He says it really matters when you're halfway around the world on some plane and you miss your family and you're questioning, why am I doing this? It helps to believe in the person that you're working for.
Right.
You know? And if you don't believe in that person, then you know you're not going to be long for that job. And so I would do it if I feel that you know I'm needed and the candidate or the president is someone I can believe in.
Fair answer.
Yeah.
So you've been doing that. You've been doing the Obama Knots.
Obama Knots, freelancing, political work, some commercial stuff. You know, and you know I love photography. I love the magic of it. I will never get tired of it. I think though my next book idea may be more artistic, you know, and this is like taking elements from my past and maybe doing some Photoshop or something like that. I don't know. I've been seeing some things that have been somewhat inspirational lately, and I'm like, how am I gonna incorporate that into my?
Maybe it's gonna be your Gordon Parks moment.
It could be. I'll be 80 years old and I can't, you know, go outside and take pictures, but I can still work a computer and, you know, make things happen.
There you go.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. Where can people find you, sir?
They can find me at jacksonimages.com or on Instagram at jackimages.
Right.
And I think that's it.
Well, I'm going to plug the book one more time.
Please do.
It's Yes, We Did. It's fantastic. I actually bought the book for presents for family members. I was that inspired by it, and I think you would like it very much as well. Thank you so much for spending a little time with us today, Lawrence.
Absolutely. Honored to be here.
All right, and thank you, Panama.
Thank you, Panama.
Anytime.
Thanks for listening to the Show Me podcast with Jeff Livingston. More shows, sponsorship, and donation information are available at showmepodcast.com.